Is the microphone working? Is that better? Sort of? It's all good. All right, that's better. So thank you for being here tonight. This is one of my favorite liturgies of the year for several reasons. I think primarily because it's a reminder of who we are as Christians. This is the liturgy where we remember, as that lesson from Exodus reminds us. So it's set around the Last Supper, which, depending on which gospel lesson, which gospel writer you are reading, there are different versions of what we now call the Last Supper. But the whole premise of this final supper that Jesus celebrated and had with his friends was that it was the Passover celebration. And they were gathering together as faithful Jewish people to remember the time way back in their ancestors' lives when God saved them. When God saved them from the plagues of Egypt and set them the rules for how to carry out Passover. So this Passover celebration was very important to them. And in the synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the Passover dinner that Jesus celebrates with his disciples is on the evening of the Passover. In the Gospel of John, it's actually the night before. There's a reason, we don't really need to get into it, but there is a reason that there is a difference. But the important part is that they are there to celebrate this very crucial moment in their faith lives, in their faith history. This Passover, the Passover of the Lord, was a reminder that God was with them, that God was going to save them for generations to come. So the Passover then, the Passover now, was one of the major pilgrimages for the Jewish people to Jerusalem, to the holy city. So Jesus went to Jerusalem a couple of times throughout his ministry, and the final time started with the entrance into Jerusalem that we mark on this past Sunday with Palm Sunday, and concludes with the events of tomorrow and then Resurrection Sunday. And in between those two crucial events, we have this story of what happened on the evening before Jesus died. And I love this story. I love that there's so much in this that reminds us of who we are as Christians, of who we are as followers of Jesus. So the Gospel of John that we just heard doesn't include, if you noticed, the institution of the Eucharist. That comes in other Gospels. But that doesn't really matter, because we know that one of the things that we are remembering today is that Jesus celebrated a final meal with his disciples, and he said, "This is my body given for you. Whenever you drink it and eat of this wine and drink of this wine and eat of this bread, do this in remembrance of me." So we are remembering what Jesus taught us. We are remembering this commandment. We are remembering that we need to love one another all the time, even when it's hard. So in the Synoptic Gospels, Jesus has this meal and gives them those words, says to them, "Do this in remembrance of me." In the Gospel of John, we don't have really details of the meal, but we have this really powerful story of Jesus getting on the floor and washing his disciples' feet. And foot washing was a very common practice in the first century because the roads were dirty, and often people would wash their feet, their own feet, or a servant would wash their feet when they entered a house as a sign of respect. But here's Jesus, who is the master, the teacher, the rabbi, getting down on the floor, wrapping a towel around himself, and washing his disciples' feet, when all tradition and all convention would tell him that should be reversed, that they should be washing his feet. But that we know that's not how Jesus rolls. So here he is getting down, washing their feet, and after that telling them, do as I have done to you. Remember this moment. Remember my teachings. Remember that love is like the center of all of this. That you need to love one another as I have loved you. And that, for me, right there is the crux of Christian community. That's what makes being part of Christian community so special and so important, is because we have that commandment to love one another, to serve one another, to literally or not literally wash each other's feet. And we do that remarkably well in this parish especially. So Jesus is reminding them and telling them, I won't be with you any longer. I'm going to a place you cannot go. And if you notice at the beginning of the story, he says, having loved his own, he loved them to the end. What a powerful statement that is, that even in the precursor, the moment right before he knows that they're coming for him, he knows that Judas has already handed him over to the authorities. He knows that this passion in the garden is coming. He still takes the time to love his disciples to the end and to wash their feet and to take care of them, even though maybe we would say, well, they should be taking care of you in this moment. But Jesus flips it all around and takes care of them, because I think that's what good leaders do. And that's what teachers help their students do by doing it themselves, by setting the example. So thank you for gathering this evening and remembering with me that these are the reasons that we gather on Sunday morning, that this final meal and this foot washing becomes really what Jesus teaches us to do, how we go out and love the world when he is no longer right beside us. When he goes on and is ascended into heaven and we are here on earth, this is how we live it out. This is what we do. So in a few moments, I will invite you to have your feet washed, and I hope you will consider it. I know it feels a little awkward, but it's you're remembering who you are as loved children of God, and you're remembering that we are all servants of one another. That really classic song, they'll know we are Christians by our love, right? So that's what this night is about. It's about love. It's about remembering. And it's about taking that final breath, that final moment together before we move into tomorrow, in the darkness and the pain and the hurt that we know is coming. This is the invitation, I think, to breathe a little, to sit in this moment, to sit wrapped in the love that Jesus is inviting us to be wrapped in. So I invite you to either consider coming forward for foot washing, or just offer a prayer of thanksgiving, offer a prayer of remembrance for all of the ways that we are taught this evening how to love. Amen.